Hey, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you are having a fantastic start to your day. And welcome to lesson 4 of the Kotlin series on how to build out this YouTube application for the Android platform. And hopefully you guys are enjoying the couple of lessons so far, and hopefully you're learning a lot about Kotlin programming at the same time. It certainly does take a lot of time to get used to all of the new syntax and also all of the concepts related to Android programming. So hopefully you are learning a lot. Now let's begin today's video by going over exactly what we did last time. And here we are in the emulator, and as you can see inside of our RecyclerView for our application over here, we are loading all of the images inside of each row by using a third-party library called Picasso, which makes this loading process much easier for our application. And we're kind of ready to move on to setting up our rows so that when we click on each item, we should move on to the next page, which kind of looks like this over here. So inside of our final product, which kind of looks like this, we're going to click on a row, and that brings us to the details of that row. And I have a course detail page, which kind of lists out all of the lessons for each one of these courses. So if I click on the intermediate training course, we have only 4 lessons. So it kind of depends on which item you click onto. The page that loads will look a little bit different. All right, so let's go ahead and begin by learning how we can set up this thing called an OnClickListener inside of Android Studio right now. Okay, so now that we are back inside of Android Studio, let me run this project to show you exactly what we have inside of our application. And basically, we're now rendering out a RecyclerView list that shows all of our rows kind of like that. And what's powering our RecyclerView is this class called main_adapter, which is this over here. And all of the views inside of each individual row is being customized inside of onBindViewHolder. So you see we are setting things like the video name, channel name, and down here we're loading images using the third-party library of Picasso. So you see how everything is very simple and very clean. We're not doing too much in terms of code. And the thing that you want to notice is that we're customizing all of our views on this holder object, which is of type CustomViewHolder. And that class is all the way down here in this file. And this is the item that we want to customize in order to provide some clicking behavior inside of our application. So in other words, I want to execute some custom action, such as clicking on this guy to do something special. And the way I'm going to do this is to show you something that you can actually construct inside of this class. And I'm going to provide something called a custom initializer. So you see init ... And inside of here, you can access the properties that belong to this class. So for example, view is a property that exists on this class. And this is the custom constructor for the Kotlin programming language. And on view, you can say setOnClickListener. Now there's actually 2 of these guys, but I'm going to use the ... version. So hit enter there. And down here, you can simply print out a message such as, let's see, test. And now I am ready to run my code. So I'm going to use debug instead. And let's see, next is 5. It's just going to load that inside of this emulator on the right side. And the moment that I click on something, let me bring up the logcat. So I have logcat, and I can click on something, and you should be able to see something inside of the bottom messages. So I don't exactly see it because I'm on the wrong emulator. So let me click on that. So we see test down there. So click, click, click. We see all of these objects being printed in the console below. So that's really good. And if you put a breakpoint there, you can also execute the breakpoint by clicking this, and you get the code to stop over there. So that's really good. And now this means that every time I click on this item, I want to present a brand new page inside of Android. And the way to do this is to actually create something called an intent object. So let me write it out first with intent equals intent. So intent. And you construct this with one of these guys, and I'm going to use the context version. So Let me see, view.context, and here you can just say main activity, and I want to provide some kind of activity as my intent. So this probably isn't going to make too much sense just yet. So let me show you actually how this works. So view.start activity, so view context, I believe, .start activity, and you see I have these couple of intents that I can load up an activity with. So let me just use that, and this I'll just fill out the intent like so. Now I don't really need this print statement anymore, so let me run my application one more time. So I'm just hitting Control-R to run my app, and that's going to allow me to click on one of these objects, and it loads up a brand new main activity. So click on that, and you can keep clicking and it'll just keep pushing this main activity onto your navigational stack. You can think of it that way. So you keep hitting back, right? And that's kind of what you see. So you keep hitting back until there are no more activities on your stack, and you'll just go to the previous application. All right, so that's how that works. And obviously you don't want to load another main activity. Instead, you want to load a different activity, perhaps a course detail activity like what we're seeing over here. And I'm going to go inside of my project to create this new activity called course detail activity. And just hit enter. Down here, we will create this class called course detail activity. And we need to subclass it as something. So let me show you what that is going to be. And I'm going to use app compat activity. So this is the compatibility library. And this is showing an error because you need to execute the constructor like that, and everything should be okay. And so onCreate is what we need to call. There's actually a couple of versions of this, and I don't really want to use this persistent state because the main activity doesn't really use it. So let me just remove that and remove that. You can use that one if you really wanted to. But now we're kind of ready to use this course detail activity. And so the reason why I know to use this instead of the other one, or instead of another type of activity, is because main activity uses that, and I'd like to keep consistent with what my activities are. And the discussion of activities and something else called fragment can be very confusing, so I'll just make it easy and simple and follow what the template project comes with. Okay, so course detail activity, let me go back to my main adapter and replace the main activity with course detail activity instead. And now I can run my application. And so instead of loading the main activity, I'm going to try an attempt to load course detail activity. When I click on this, and you see the application has crashed, so log activity. And the message that we're getting as our error is that we are unable to find explicit activity with the class of, see, course detail activity, and it says, have you declared this activity in your Android manifest file? So this is something new that you haven't really come across yet. So let me show you where Android manifest is, and that's where it is located. And so last time we set up this thing called uses permission for internet permission. And now we would like to also set up something else called an activity inside of my application. So by default, we get something called main activity because that's the very first activity of our app. And now we are ready to create this thing called course detail activity. So this just comes up automatically, and you can close it off like so. And now our course detail activity is available to be launched as part of our application. So let me show you what that looks like by clicking onto that. And now this is the course detail activity. And you can ignore this stuff if you don't want to fill it out. And I think that should be okay. So something else that you can do is provide a label. So I'm going to say course detail. So course detail like that. And something else that you also want to do is to specify launch mode equals single top. You notice how we don't have a back button there, so let me see if that actually fixes it. So relaunching my application, clicking on this item there, we don't really have the back button, but if we click back, we get this. Okay. All right, so let me quickly show you how to add a back button on this page over here so that we can actually navigate back using the arrow up above, and it's going to look something like this over there. So the way you would do this is to revisit your Android manifest file, and inside of your course detail activity, you can type in some metadata for your activity. So let's just close it off like that. And I believe what I want to actually say is name. And I believe I can say android.support. Let's see, parent activity is what my file says on my other screen. And for this name property, this metadata, you can specify the value for it. And the parent for this particular activity is going to be the main activity. And once I have that changed inside of my project, when I click on something, the course detail activity will load. And because it has a parent, you can just hit back and we'll get this page over there. So one thing I would like to kind of draw your attention to is if I click on this during the scroll all the way at the bottom of my page and click on back, you notice that we haven't really gone back to the previous activity that was scrolled all the way down. So that's one minor detail that you want to fix by going back up to your main activity. And for this, you also want to say launch motive. Say launch motive single top, and I believe that'll fix it for you. So very, very subtle. And so if I scroll all the way down, click onto this perhaps, and go back, you notice that we are still at the very bottom of our scroll. And we go back like that, we get back to our main activity. So really good job there. And now the thing that's left is to kind of set up our course detail activity so that we can get a list going. So this is a list. And the course detail activity over here, you want to perhaps say set content view to some kind of resource, right? And this main activity layout file is just a very simple recycler view. So I will use that with a layout dot, let's see, recycler, see main or activity main, I think that's called. And just close it off like that. And now you can access that recycler view from main and say perhaps set background color of color.red. So let's run our code now. And typically you wouldn't want to use the same layout file for a different activity. You would just create another one. But this seems to work for now. So I'm going to click on this and you see our list or our recycler view is completely red. So that's kind of what we have right now. All right, so I'm going to wrap up today's lesson by setting up my recycler view with a couple of placeholder rows, kind of like this over here. So the way I'm going to do this is rather quickly by first setting up RecyclerView main dot layout manager equals linear layout manager, like that. And if you don't provide this class over here with the context of this, your recycler views don't exactly know how to render itself. So make sure to do that. And the next thing you have to create on RecyclerView main is some kind of adapter. So what is this adapter? Well, let me create it right below. And I'm going to do all of this from within one file to kind of make it easier. And I'm going to make this adapter private for this class. So private class. And let's say course detail adapter, like that, and subclass it as RecyclerView.adapter, so adapter with a capital A, view holder guy, which we'll provide in just a little bit. All right, so what is this custom view holder that I need? Well, let me just create this other private class down here as perhaps course detail lesson view holder. That's a really long name, and we'll subclass it as RecyclerView.viewHolder. And for this, let me just remove the detail. I think that's a little bit redundant. And this view holder, I need to actually give it a custom constructor that contains a view. So, custom view, whatever you want to call this thing. And let's just have it be of Android view. And this is my custom constructor. And this over here is going to call this custom view. And basically, this is my super call. So RecyclerView.viewHolder has a super class call, and we're just going to call super with the custom view coming from our course lesson view holder. So don't be too concerned about that syntax, but this is just how it works. And now what the course adapter can do is to use this course view or course lesson view holder. And now we are able to kind of execute this custom constructor at the very end there. And we are ready to actually execute or provide the custom get item count behavior. So return, I don't know, 1. And over here, I think we need onCreateViewHolder. So if you mouse over this, it tells you what you need. So the last one is onBindViewHolder, and you should be good to go here. So again, this might be a little confusing, but this tells you how many items to render in your list. OnCreateViewHolder tells you what the view looks like in your list as your cell or your row. So one thing that you can actually do in here is say, red view equals some kind of view like this. I think that works. So I think we need a context for this. I think that's okay. So question mark. So context comes from this parent view group. And if you say red view.set background color equals, I don't know, color.blue, you can also set red view.height or minimum height equals 50. And you can just return some kind of view. So this expects you to return a course lesson view holder. So let's construct a course lesson view holder, which is this guy down here. And you can now pass it in some kind of custom view, which is going to be a red view for now. So red view is actually going to be blue view. So let's say make this thing blue. I think that's a little bit better. Blue, blue, and blue. And now let me run my code one more time. I think I need to set this as my adapter. So course detail adapter, and construct it with a blank constructor. Run this code inside of my emulator one more time. We should be able to get some blue views inside of my course detail view. So we have this blue view at the very top. So let me remove the red color for the RecyclerView background. And now we just get that one blue row. So you can actually return 5 or just 2. Hit the instant change. This will get a little bit taller. So that's 50-50. Returning 5 will give you a row of 250. And that's kind of what you get. Now, obviously, you don't want to just have these blue views for your application, and instead you want to have something more detailed, such as these course lesson rows inside of our final product. And the way you would do this is to go inside of your layout and create a new XML resource. So let me go to File, New, and XML over here, Layout XML. And this we will give a file name of perhaps course lesson and underscore row. And the root tag, I want to say constraint layout. I think that should work. Hit the finish. And I don't think this actually works. So let me hit Control space, and I should be able to get the constraint layout like that. And that'll match down here as well. And go ahead and hit the design mode. And now we are back with a view that we can actually design. So let me perhaps bring in the image view on the left side. And hopefully this is becoming more and more familiar with the development process. So let's draw this IC launcher on the left side. So anchor it to the left, anchor it to the top, and then we should be okay. So there is what we get. Now I'm going to go ahead and give this thing an aspect ratio, again, sort of similar to the last lesson. So let me give it a width of 140 dp. That seems to be okay. And that's what that looks like. And if I click on this, I should be able to give it a aspect ratio, but you don't see that little triangle yet. So let me change this to match constraint. Click on that, and we have 1:1. So the aspect ratio is 16:9, and that is exactly what we have. So really good stuff. And you can only do aspect ratio if one of your layout width, height, or both are using match constraint, which is really 0 dp. Okay, so hopefully you understand how that works. It does take a little bit of time to get used to. And now that we are here, let me drag this and clamp this onto the very top. And then this goes onto the left there. So everything might be very, very small. So let me just zoom in a little bit. And this is our course lesson. So course lesson title. That sounds like a good name. And we can also use the duration somewhere over there at the bottom. So let me just drag this in over here. Clamp that to the bottom of the course title. Put that on the left of the course lesson. Doesn't really matter how you do this. As long as it looks okay, I think you're fine. So click on this, bring this to 0, bring this to, bring this to the right over there. I think this should go to the right as well. And this, let's just say match constraint to expand it fully from left to right. This, we can say match constraint as well. And I think we are okay. So let me see what's wrong with this guy. So layout width needs to be match constraint, and the height should be wrap content, and we'll change this to 0 as well. So this is our constraint layout, and we can go back to our course detail activity, and inside of our course detail adapter, I would like to use this row instead. So the course lesson row. And so the way we do this is to actually use something called a layout inflator, which we used in the other adapter. So let me show you how to create a layout inflator. And so construct it like this, and you actually need something called a from context, and parent has a context on it, and that's what our layout inflator is kind of built from. And layout inflator has a method called inflate, which takes in a resource. And let's see, I think I might want to use this over here. So let's inflate it with a resource ID of r.layout.courseLessonRow. That gives you some kind of ID, and you just say comma, you provide a parent group of parent, and then at the very end you just say false for the attached to root, and this will actually give you your custom view equals that. And now you can just use custom view instead of the blue view for your course lesson holder. So comment out all of that, run your code now, and all of your course detail rows should be using this layout inflator custom view guy now. So click into this, and you'll see that we have our image view, course lesson title, and the text view right below it. So if you modify your 5, you can actually get less items to show up. And the reason why it's really, really large and tall like that is because your course lesson row, click on this, you want to make sure the height is actually wrap content, which will bring the bounds all the way down to the bottom. So apply your changes, and then you get your 5 rows kind of like that. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for today's video on how we can set up our Android application to use these new activities as our pages, and how we can also use intents to start these activities. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video and you found it interesting. Make sure to give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel for more videos inside of this series. For the source code, you can find the link in the description below. That's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye bye guys.